The battlefield was silent, not the quiet of peace, but the hollow emptiness that follows a storm. Charred ships floated like skeletons in the void, and once-proud alien fortresses now drifted in broken pieces across the blackness of space. Smoke from countless fires spiraled slowly into the vacuum, carrying with it the ghosts of 1,000 fallen warriors. On the edge of this devastation, a single ship remained intact, its hull scorched but stubbornly standing. Inside, the corridors smelled of burnt circuits and recycled air. The human pilot, Captain Elias Ward, sat alone in the cockpit, staring out at the debris. His hands rested on the controls, trembling slightly, not from fear but from exhaustion. Weeks of relentless fighting had worn down even his iron resolve. His reflection in the cockpit glass showed a face lined with soot and grief, eyes hollow yet unyielding. He had survived, yes, but at a cost that felt unbearable. The human fleet had won the final battle. The galactic wars were over, yet victory felt strangely empty. Elias remembered the faces of those he had lost, friends, comrades, even strangers whose courage had inspired him. And then there was her, Princess Lyra of the Zephyrian Empire. She had once been the brightest jewel of the alien worlds, radiant and untouchable. During the war, their paths had collided in unexpected ways, each encounter leaving a mark neither of them could erase. They had fought on opposite sides, yet amidst explosions and chaos, a fragile trust had formed. A connection beyond politics or loyalty, something human, something real. But now, the silence was a reminder of absence. Lyra's messages had stopped coming weeks ago. Signals were blocked, ships lost, communications destroyed. Elias had thought she was safe, somewhere hidden, preserved by her people, or perhaps by sheer luck. He hadn't known that she had survived too, and that she had watched, helpless, as her empire crumbled under the human advance. The cockpit door hissed open. It was a routine check, an automated security scan, but Elias barely noticed. He didn't move to greet it. The stars outside seemed brighter now, mocking him, reminding him of the freedom he had fought for but never truly felt. He remembered the last moment he had seen her in battle. A fleeting glance, the way her eyes had locked onto his across the void, unspoken words trembling between them like fragile glass. Then she had vanished, swallowed by chaos, leaving only a promise whispered across the radio. "Find me if you survive." Elias swallowed hard, gripping the armrest. He had survived, but the question of her survival gnawed at him relentlessly. Had she trusted him? Had she hoped he would come? Or had he abandoned her as the universe seemed determined to suggest? A sudden alert pierced the silence. A faint signal blinked on his console, one that bore the unmistakable mark of Zephyrian origin. Heart-hammering, Elias adjusted the frequency. The signal pulsed with clarity amidst the interference. And then he heard it, her voice. It was strained, almost broken, but undeniably hers. "Elias, can you hear me?" He exhaled sharply, feeling a mix of relief and dread. The voice was real, yet it carried something else, a tremor of accusation, pain, and unspoken betrayal. He wanted to speak, to tell her everything, but words caught in his throat. All he could do was reply with a shaky, "Lyra, I hear you, I'm here." Her silence stretched after that. The connection remained, but her next words were slow, deliberate, and heavy with emotion. "Why did you leave me? After everything, have you abandoned me?" The words struck him harder than any weapon ever could. Elias leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. He remembered the fire, the screams, the way her ship had been surrounded by enemy fighters. He had fought to reach her, but the path had been blocked, and orders had kept him moving forward. Duty, strategy, survival, these were human chains, and they had dragged him away from her side at the very moment she had needed him most. His fingers clenched the controls. I never wanted to leave you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I tried, I thought I—" A shudder ran through the ship as it entered the Zephyrian signal corridor. The remnants of their lost worlds flickered past in distorted hollow images. Elias knew that to answer her, to reach her, he would have to confront the ghosts of the past. He would have to navigate the ruins of a fallen empire, face the anger and mistrust that had built up like walls around her heart, and prove, beyond doubt, that he had never abandoned her, not in thought, not in spirit. And yet, even in the shadow of destruction, a spark lingered. A fragile hope that between the human and the princess, something could still endure, something worth fighting for beyond wars and empires. Elias took a deep breath, steadying himself. The silence would not last. He would not let it. not while her voice still called across the void. Elia's ship drifted slowly through the remains of the Zephyrian capital's orbital defenses. Broken turrets and shattered satellites hung like frozen ghosts around him, their metal skeletons reflecting the distant light of dying suns. Every passing fragment reminded him of battles fought, friends lost, and the promise he had never kept. Yet now, the faint signal of Lyra's voice guided him, a fragile thread through the chaos. The princess waited on the other end, her ship barely recognizable, cloaked in patches of scorched armor and flickering shields. When he docked, the airlock hissed, and a sudden, tense silence filled the space between them. Lyra stepped forward, tall and regal even in ruin. Her alien features, sharp and luminous, were tinged with exhaustion, the faint shimmer of her tears reflecting the harsh lights of the docking bay. "Have you come, or is this another excuse?" Her voice was calm, almost cold, but the weight behind it was palpable. Elias hesitated, searching her eyes. They had once held a spark of admiration and curiosity, now shadowed by betrayal and pain. "I came because I promised," he said quietly, stepping forward. "I never abandoned you, You left me." Her hands trembled, but she held them at her sides, refusing to reach out. "I was surrounded. They said you couldn't save me. You went on without me." Her words cut through the air like sharpened blades. Elias felt the sting of each syllable. He remembered the moment he had been forced to choose, pursue orders that might save thousands or risk everything for one life. Duty had won. Strategy had won. Humanity had won. But in that victory, he had failed the one person he could never forget. "I had no choice," he said, his voice breaking. "Every path I took was blocked. I tried, Lyra. I fought every second to reach you, but—" He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I couldn't." She turned away, packing the length of her damaged ship, her movements sharp but controlled. "Couldn't or would," she whispered to herself. "Humans always speak of honor and duty, but when it comes to feelings, when it comes to trust, you fail." Her words carried the weight of worlds destroyed and a heart betrayed. Elias followed her slowly, keeping his distance. "I didn't fail you," he insisted, his voice softer now. "Not in spirit, not in thought. Every moment since then I've been trying to find you, to come back, to make this right." Lyra stopped, her eyes glimmering with a mixture of fury and vulnerability. "You speak of making right what is broken. Do you know what it's like to watch everything you love collapse, to survive when everyone else falls? Do you know what it feels like to be left alone in the ashes of your world?" He knelt slightly, placing a hand over the console between them, though he didn't touch her. "I can't feel what you felt," he admitted, "but I can feel what I feel. And what I feel is that I am here now. I will not leave again, I swear it." For a long moment, silence hung between them. The hum of the ship, the distant echo of space debris colliding outside, and the faint rhythm of their own breathing filled the void. Then Lyra's shoulders slumped slightly, the tension in her body easing just enough for him to see the pain beneath the anger. "You humans always speak of courage," she said softly, "yet courage without heart is just destruction." Her gaze softened, but only a fraction. "Do you even know what heart is?" "I think I do," Elias said, his eyes steady on hers. "It's what makes me come here now, even after all the chaos, even after all I've lost. I still care for you, I still trust you." She shook her head, a faint, bitter smile appearing. "Trust is earned in war and shattered by it. You ask me to believe in you again after everything." "I'm asking you to believe in us," he corrected gently. "Not the war, not the empires, just us. I will rebuild. I will fight for it if you let me." Her gaze softened further, though the pain lingered. She looked at the wreckage surrounding them and then back at him. "You speak boldly, human. Words are easy. But actions—" She let her sentence hang in the cold, metallic air, heavy with challenge. Elias nodded. "Then let my actions speak. Let me prove it." Outside, the ruined stars of 1,000 destroyed worlds seemed to shimmer in acknowledgement, as if the universe itself waited to see what choice the human and the alien princess would make in the aftermath of war. For the first time since the end of the battle, hope flickered, fragile, uncertain, but alive. The princess led Elias through the remnants of her flagship. The corridors were dark, flickering lights casting strange, shifting shadows. The walls were scarred by battle, panels ripped open, wires hanging like twisted vines. The silence of the abandoned ship was oppressive, broken only by the soft hiss of emergency systems struggling to function. Each step they took echoed through the hollow vessel, a reminder that life on this ship had ended long ago. Lyra moved with a careful grace, her gaze scanning every corner. Despite the exhaustion etched on her face, her posture remained regal, the way a ruler carries herself even when her kingdom has fallen. Elias followed quietly, the weight of unspoken words heavy between them. He wanted to speak, to reassure her, but every attempt seemed insufficient. How could he explain the things he could not control, the orders he had obeyed, or the moments when fate itself had conspired against them? "Follow me," Lyra said finally, her voice steady but soft. She stopped at a large chamber in the center of the ship. The room had once been a command hub, screens now shattered, consoles sparking weakly. She gestured toward a viewing platform. "This is where I stayed after everything." Elias looked out the window. The planets of her destroyed empire drifted silently in the void. The view was breathtaking in its devastation, a silent testament to the wars that had raged across galaxies. He felt a lump in his throat. He had seen destruction before, but never like this, never with someone he cared about so intimately watching it fall apart around them. I thought I would die here," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "No one came for me, I waited, I hoped, and when I realized no one would, I almost gave up." She turned toward him, eyes shining. "And then I heard your voice. I couldn't believe it, a human coming here through all this ruin. I didn't know whether to trust it or fear it." Elias stepped closer. "I promised. I kept that promise. Even if I had to face the edge of the universe, I would have found you." His hand hovered over hers but did not touch, respecting the distance she had built around herself. Lyra studied him, her expression conflicted. "You speak of promises," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But promises cannot undo what has been lost. Friends, family, worlds. Can your words restore them?" "No," he admitted quietly. "But they can guide us forward. They can remind us why we fight and who we fight for. And I fight for you, Lyra. I fight for the chance to stand beside you, not as a soldier, but as someone who truly cares." Her gaze softened, yet doubt lingered. "Humans always think love is enough. You think courage and care can rebuild what's shattered. But do you even understand the weight of loss?" "I can try to understand," Elias said firmly. "I may never feel what you've lost, but I can feel what is here between us, and I will not let it be destroyed again. Whatever comes next, I will face it with you." The ship suddenly shuddered violently, throwing both of them against the consoles. Sparks flew from damaged panels and warning sirens wailed weakly. Elias grabbed her arm, steadying her. "What now?" she asked, alarm flashing in her eyes. He pointed to the view outside. A shadow moved among the debris, a small fleet of hostile scavenger drones programmed to hunt survivors and salvage anything of value. They were drawn by the lingering energy signature of the princess's flagship. "We are not safe," he said. "They've tracked us here." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Then we fight," she said, her voice low and determined. "I am not helpless, Elias. Do not think I am still a princess only in title. I will protect my people, even if they are gone." Elias nodded. "Then we fight together." He grabbed a nearby weapon console, powering up the automated defenses. Lyra moved beside him, her hands steady despite the danger. Their movements synchronized instinctively, a partnership forged in past battles and tested by mutual trust. For the first time since the war ended, they fought side by side, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as allies who understood the value of each life saved, each moment shared. Every drone they destroyed was a small victory, a sign that hope could exist even among ruins. After the last drone fell, silence returned. The room smelled of burnt circuitry and recycled air, but now it felt different, charged, alive, as if the universe had acknowledged that two hearts, though battered, could still endure together. Lyra turned to Elias. "You have courage, human, perhaps more than I expected." A faint smile appeared, fleeting but real. "But courage alone cannot heal everything." "I know," Elias said, "but we'll start with trust. That's where it begins." And for the first time since the war, Lyra allowed herself a moment of fragile hope, letting the human stand beside her in the ruins of her world. The corridors of the ruined flagship were quiet again, but the calm was uneasy. Every step Elias took reminded him of the lives lost here, the crews who had once walked these halls, the soldiers who had died defending a fatting empire. Lyra led him deeper into the ship, past shattered windows and broken consoles. Her eyes scanned every corner, alert to the slightest movement, as if danger could spring from the shadows at any moment. "I never thought I'd return here," she murmured, her voice distant. "Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it burning, I heard screams, I felt the loss over and over." Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for the first time, Elias noticed the subtle tremor in her hands. She carried her dignity like armor, but even the strongest armor has cracks. Elias stayed silent, following her lead. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but words felt inadequate. What could a human say to an alien princess whose world had been shattered? What comfort could he offer someone who had survived alone, through despair and isolation, while he had been trapped by duty and circumstance? Finally, they reached a room that had once been the princess's private quarters. The walls were scorched, personal artifacts destroyed, but in one corner a small crystalline sculpture still gleamed untouched. Lyra knelt beside it, tracing the delicate edges with her fingers. This survived," she whispered. "A reminder that not everything is gone, some things endure even in ruin." Elias watched her, moved by the vulnerability she rarely showed. "Some things endure because we hold on," he said softly. "Because we fight for them. Not everything can be rebuilt, but we can carry pieces forward. That's what I want to do with you." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Carry pieces forward," she repeated almost to herself. "You speak of hope, human, but hope is fragile. It breaks as easily as crystal." "I know," he admitted. "But I also know that broken pieces can form something new, something stronger. That's what humans do. That's why I survived this war. That's why I came to you." For a moment, the air between them seemed to vibrate with tension. The princess studied him, her mind weighing every word, every gesture. Elias held her gaze steadily, not flinching. He had seen loss and fear, but he would not waver now, not when the chance to stand beside her, truly beside her, was within reach. Suddenly, the ship shook violently, throwing them both off balance. The lights flickered, and alarms blared as a deep, resonant rumble echoed through the hull. "What now?" Lyra shouted, grabbing the nearest console for support. Elias raced to the viewing platform. Outside, a small fleet of rogue warships appeared, scavengers drawn to the energy of the damaged flagship. They were opportunists, remnants of defeated factions hunting the fallen for profit. "They want to take the ship," he said grimly. "We have to stop them or we'll lose everything here." Lyra's eyes hardened. "Then we fight, together." Her voice was firm, commanding, yet laced with a faint vulnerability. Elias felt a surge of admiration. She was still a princess, still a warrior, still someone who would never surrender to despair, even when surrounded by ruins. The battle began without hesitation. They moved in unison, Lyra operating the ship's remaining weapons while Elias coordinated maneuvers and automated defenses. Their combined effort was seamless, instinctive, a testament to the bond forged in fire and conflict. Every enemy destroyed was a small victory, a reclaiming of power from the chaos that had threatened to consume them. Amid the fighting, Elias caught sight of Lyra's face, focused, determined, yet tinged with fear. He realized then that the war had changed her, made her stronger, sharper, but also more guarded. She had survived horrors he could barely imagine, and yet she was here, facing him, facing the battle, choosing to trust him again. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, silence fell once more. The adrenaline faded, leaving exhaustion and relief in its place. Lyra leaned against the console, breathing heavily, and Elias moved to her side. "You were amazing," he said quietly. She looked at him, a small, tired smile breaking through. "So were you," she replied. Then almost reluctantly she added, "Perhaps hope is not entirely foolish." Elias smiled faintly, knowing that even the smallest acknowledgement of trust was a victory. In the midst of destruction, in the echoes of the past, they had found something worth protecting, each other. And that, he knew, was only the beginning. The aftermath of battle left the flagship trembling with minor structural failures. Sparks rained from exposed conduits, and the faint hum of the remaining life support systems filled the air with a metallic resonance. Elias walked beside Lyra through the corridors, both moving cautiously, aware that even small mistakes could trigger catastrophic damage in the damaged vessel. Yet, each step forward carried more than just caution. It carried the unspoken acknowledgement of shared survival. Lyra's eyes were fixed on the walls, scars of war etched in every panel. Her usual composure was marred by occasional flinches whenever a light flickered or a distant metallic groan reverberated through the hull. Elias noticed the subtle signs, her grip tightening on the railing, a shallow breath she attempted to disguise. He wanted to speak, to comfort her, but the right words seemed impossibly fragile in this environment, where every sound could be the herald of danger. Finally, she stopped in a room that had once served as the ship's data archive. Panels were scorched and twisted, but one terminal flickered weakly. Lyra knelt beside it, her fingers hovering over the controls. "There are things I have not told you," she admitted quietly without looking at him. "Secrets of the Empire, secrets that could explain why everything fell." Elias crouched beside her, his voice gentle. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. You don't have to carry it alone anymore." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and relief. "I trusted so few during the war, Elias, and even with that trust, I could not always protect them or myself. There were decisions I made that may seem cruel even to you." "Lyra," he said softly, "I don't judge you. I only want to understand. Only then can we move forward." For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the faint crackle of failing systems. Then, slowly, Lyra began to speak. She told him of the secret Zephyrian protocols, the desperate choices made to defend the Empire even as collapse seemed inevitable. She spoke of sacrifices, of civilians hidden in orbital shelters, of covert alliances and betrayals that had led to mass destruction. Every revelation weighed heavily, but Elias listened without interruption, absorbing each word, each pause, each confession. "I should have told you sooner," Lyra admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But I feared you would hate me or leave me, and when the human fleets advanced, I had to act quickly without counsel." Her gaze fell to the floor. "And then you were gone, and I was alone, carrying the guilt of everything." Elias reached out, finally letting his hand brush against hers, careful, tentative. "I'm here now," he said. "Not to judge, not to blame, but to stand with you. Whatever secrets, whatever burdens, you don't carry them alone anymore. We face them together." Lyra's breathing quickened, a storm of conflicting emotions passing across her face. Relief, sorrow, fear, and something else. Hope, fragile but persistent. For the first time since the war ended, she allowed herself to imagine that she was not alone, that the human who had haunted her thoughts through nightmares and lonely hours was now here, truly present. A distant vibration shook the ship, causing both of them to glance toward the viewports. Debris from the surrounding battlefield drifted past, and in its shadow a faint glimmer of movement caught Elias' eye. "We're not entirely safe," he murmured. "Scavengers may have retreated, but there are always remnants, always threats." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Then we continue," she said firmly. "We cannot let fear dictate our choices. We cannot let the past imprison us forever." Elias nodded, feeling the resolve in her words. "We'll repair what we can. We'll reclaim this ship at least enough to leave orbit. And after that, we decide what comes next, together." Lyra's gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment the weight of her burden seemed lighter. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "perhaps there is a way forward, a path that doesn't only lead to loss, a path where hope can exist." Elias gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "It already exists," he said, "because we refuse to give up, because we fight not only for survival but for each other. That is what endures." The ship's lights flickered again, but this time the darkness did not feel as oppressive. Amid the ruins of empires and the shadows of past mistakes, two souls who had survived unimaginable loss had found each other. And that connection, tenuous yet undeniable, gave them a reason to move forward, one step, one heartbeat, one choice at a time. The flagship drifted silently through the wreckage of the Zephyrian orbit, but silence rarely meant safety. Elias monitored the sensors, scanning the surrounding debris for any sign of danger. His hands moved with precision over the controls, but his mind remained partially on Lyra, who stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the distant stars. She was quiet, contemplative, and yet tense. Every small noise, every flicker of light seemed to pull her attention. Elias finally spoke, breaking the fragile calm. We need to get the engines online. If we stay here too long, more scavengers could appear, and they won't be as easy to stop as before. Lyra nodded, her jaw set. I know, but every system we touch could fail. The ship is fragile. One wrong move and it collapses completely. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear she tried to hide. We'll take it slow, Elias reassured her. Step by step, together. Her eyes met his, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself a small, trusting smile. Together, she repeated. It was a word heavy with meaning, carrying the weight of shared battles, shared pain, and the possibility of something new. They worked side by side, repairing conduits, rerouting power, and rebooting systems that had lain dormant since the war's end. Sparks flew from exposed panels, and smoke curled into the low gravity, but neither flinched. Each success was a small victory, a reminder that even in ruin, survival, and perhaps hope was possible. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time seemed meaningless in the vacuum of space. Finally, the engines hummed to life, weakly but steadily. The ship shuddered, groaned, and then stabilized. Lyra's hand brushed against a console, a gesture almost unconscious, and Elias caught her glance. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the unspoken words between them were loud and clear. They had survived. They were still standing. But as relief began to settle, a new threat emerged. Sensors blinked red, an approaching fleet, fast-moving, sleek ships with weapons capable of cutting through their fragile hull. Pirates, Elias said grimly. Or worse, they've tracked us, and they know we're vulnerable. Lyra's expression hardened. Then we fight, she said, her voice low, determined, yet carrying a hint of fear. We cannot run forever, not now, not after everything. Elias placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. We don't have to face this alone, we face it together. The pirates' ships closed in, and the flagship rocked under the strain of maneuvering. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the vacuum of space seemed to press against them. Elias and Lyra worked in tandem, coordinating weapons and shields with precision. Each shot fired, each evasive move was a delicate dance, life and death balanced on the edge of trust and instinct. During a particularly sharp turn, the flagship shuddered violently, throwing Lyra off balance. Elias reached out instinctively, catching her before she could fall. Their hands met, fingers entwined briefly, and for a fleeting moment the chaos faded. All that existed was the trust between them, the silent promise that neither would let the other fall. Do you trust me? Elias asked quietly over the roar of alarms. Lyra's gaze met his, unwavering. I trust you, she said firmly. Even if the world collapses around us, I trust you. The words gave him strength. Together they led the flagship through a gauntlet of enemy fire, weaving between debris and launching countermeasures with precision. Slowly, steadily, the hostile fleet was driven back. One by one, their attackers were forced to retreat, unable to match the human-alien synergy and determination that powered the damaged ship. When the last enemy ship vanished into the darkness, the flagship floated in silence once more. Exhaustion weighed heavily on both of them, but their hearts were lightened by victory. They had survived another trial, and more importantly, they had survived together. Lyra turned to Elias, her face soft with emotion. Perhaps this is the first time I have truly felt safe in weeks, she admitted quietly. Not because the danger is gone, but because you are here, and you stayed. Elias smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm not going anywhere, he said firmly. Not now, not ever. In that moment, amid the flickering lights of a wounded ship drifting through the remnants of a shattered empire, two souls found a fragile, unbreakable connection. It was not the absence of danger or loss, but the presence of trust, courage, and hope that would carry them forward, together. The flagship floated through the shattered orbit like a wounded bird, its engines humming steadily now, carrying two souls who had endured more than either could have imagined. Elias stood beside Lyra at the viewing platform, their hands brushing lightly, a quiet tether connecting them amidst the ruins. Outside, the stars were brilliant and cold, scattered across the black void like scattered memories of a galaxy that had once burned with endless conflict. Lyra's eyes were fixed on the remnants of her world, fragments of cities and orbital stations drifting in silence. "It is all gone," she whispered. Her voice was calm, but a subtle tremor betrayed the depth of her sorrow. "Everything I knew, everything I loved, reduced to dust and echoes." Elias wrapped an arm around her shoulders, careful and gentle. "Not everything," he said softly. "Some things endure, we endure, and sometimes that is enough to start again." Her gaze shifted to him, searching, questioning, as if testing whether he truly understood. "Do you really mean that? After all I have done, all I have seen, do you still see me as someone worth standing by?" "I do," he said firmly, his eyes locking with hers. "Not because of your title, not because of your empire, but because of you. The courage you carry, the strength you hide, the part of you that still believes, even when hope seems impossible. That is why I stand with you. That is why I will never leave." Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly as she struggled to keep the emotions she had held tightly restrained. The war, the betrayal, the loss, they had carved deep scars into her heart. And yet, in this moment, the presence of a human who had defied fate, who had chosen to return to her against all odds, offered a fragile light. She let herself step closer, allowing the warmth of his presence to seep into the cold emptiness left by years of conflict. I thought I would never trust anyone again," she confessed, her voice trembling with honesty. "But you forced me to believe in something I thought was impossible." Elias gently lifted her hand to his chest. "Trust is earned," he said, "but sometimes it is enough to take the first step. That step is all it takes to build something lasting. Together we can find a way forward." The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy with unspoken understanding, with the weight of what had been endured and the promise of what could be. Lyra's shoulders relaxed slightly, the tension of months, years even, of isolation beginning to ease. The human beside her had proven that connection could survive even in the aftermath of devastation. Then a faint signal appeared on the ship's sensors, a beacon from nearby human and allied fleets. Relief flooded Elias, but more importantly, it reminded both of them that the galaxy, though scarred, was not entirely lost. There was a future waiting beyond the wreckage, beyond the shadows of war. Lyra turned fully to him, her eyes shining with emotion she could no longer suppress. "Elias, thank you," she said quietly, "for finding me, for standing by me, for giving me hope when I had none." He smiled, brushing a lock of her hair from her face. "No thanks needed," he replied. "We survived because we refused to give up, and now we choose what comes next." The ship's engines purred, steady and strong, carrying them past the debris of destroyed empires and fallen fleets. Light from distant stars painted the interior of the flagship with soft, warm hues, like a promise that even amidst ruin, life and courage could flourish. Lyra leaned slightly against Elias, her head resting on his shoulder. The gesture was small yet monumental, a quiet declaration of trust, and the first step toward healing. She had survived the collapse of her world, and now she was learning to survive alongside someone who truly understood the meaning of loyalty, courage, and love. Together, they plotted a course toward the approaching Allied fleet. Beyond the darkness, beyond the pain and destruction, lay the possibility of a new beginning. Not as princess and soldier, not as alien and human, but as two beings who had chosen each other when the galaxy itself seemed determined to tear them apart. And as the flagship glided through the remnants of the war, Lyra whispered almost to herself, "Perhaps there is life beyond the ashes." Elias tightened his hand around hers. "Yes," he said firmly, "and we will live it together." The stars stretched endlessly before them, a vast canvas waiting for their next chapter. Amid the remnants of a shattered empire and the echoes of war, two hearts beat in unison, a testament to courage, resilience, and the enduring power of connection. The galaxy was vast, but together they had found a home within each other.